All right, Adam, we're hooking up on Zoom here. We don't usually do this during the season, but we had a couple practice videos this week, and I know we both wanted some time to kind of look over CSU a little more before we did our predictions. So we're going to get into that today, and now that you've had some time to look at it, have your thoughts changed at all on this game as the week's gone along, or just kind of what are you thinking about this game? I'm not asking for
I think,
prediction yet, but
yeah, well, I think going into the season, this was a slam dunk win compared to other games on the schedule. Um, and I still think that Colorado should definitely win this game, even despite what happened out in Lincoln
Mhm.
last weekend. But I know that Canvas Stadium is going to be more fired up for this game than any game in the history of that stadium.
Yeah,
So after being in Lincoln and seeing that atmosphere and seeing how much just that fan adrenaline from the other side can affect things, I don't know, maybe tweaked it a little bit, but the fan environment at Campus Stadium, no offense to Colorado State people, or maybe offense to them, I don't care. It's not going to be what it was in Lincoln last weekend.
no, no. It's really not. I mean, it absolutely can't be. I mean, there was 87,000 people
Yeah,
almost in
yeah.
Lincoln, and Canvas I think holds like 30 some, but they said they can get into up to 41. So I'm going to go 41. That's not even half. I'm guessing a third of those fans, at least a quarter, are going to be Buff fans. I think it's going to look a little bit like when Nebraska comes to Folsom, and there's a large chunk of red. I think there's going to be a large chunk of black, and I think that there's going to be a lot of Buff fans there. I, I I was really surprised that CU was kind of overwhelmed by that last week. I can't imagine they're overwhelmed by 40,000 people.
No, that's the one saving grace of that game out in Lincoln, right? Is that whatever CSU thinks they're throwing at CU, they saw it
Right,
on a grander scale a week ago. I'm
right.
curious, Brian, to kind of touch base on this rivalry because it is longstanding and it's a rivalry that Colorado fans genuinely have not accepted.
Yeah,
CU is a power conference program that has a national championship with a Heisman Trophy winner. I think, what is it, like 30 All Americans? And I think CSU has like six all time. And so there's always been kind of this looking down the nose at CSU. And I get it. Like, you shouldn't aspire to be a CSU, or like if you beat them, as many Colorado fans have pointed out over my time covering the program, it's been a situation of, well, if we blow them out, it was expected to. If we lose to them, it's the end of the world. So this game is not good
yeah,
for us. And so I appreciated Rick George for saying, you know what, we're going to change up this rivalry a little bit. It's gotten stale down in Denver, and there were some amazing games down in Denver. The
yeah.
2003 game with Joel Klatt was my first year covering Colorado, and I'll never forget what that environment was like. But
Yep.
it got so awful down there, and everybody complained about it. Nobody liked going down to that neutral field unless you lived down in Denver and it was an easier commute for you, and that was
Right.
the reason you liked it. But because both programs struggled for so long, revolving door with coaches coming and going, it just completely lost that luster. I felt like last year in Boulder, it came back. That animosity, and Jay Norvell certainly helped out with that.
Yeah.
His family kind of helped out with that earlier this offseason, but it seems like Coach Prime and Jay Norvell are kind of trying to pump the brakes on that. And then we see Romy Bean post some footage from CSU players last night, and it's like, we're back, baby. This is what we needed for this game, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel about this game, just the rivalry in general? Because I know a lot of CU fans don't want to talk about it being a rivalry game, but in 2024, I'm pretty adamant that it is.
Yeah, I love it. I covered the last game that was in Fort Collins, this showdown in
Okay.
1996. That was the first college football game I ever covered. And I was 21 years old, super excited to be covering this game, like a big time game, all this stuff. And it was awesome. I remember back then you could like go into the locker room and interview players. So I remember being in the locker room interviewing Coy Detmer, Herschel Troutman, after this big CU win, up at Hughes Stadium, not on campus, but, Hughes Stadium. I've always liked it. I was at the 2003 game, the Joel Klatt game. A lot of those games down in Denver. Last year was the first one I covered in Boulder. I missed some of those ones that were played before then, but I like it. I think it's a fun game. I like that it's not every year. I understand that point. Pat Rooney and I were talking a little bit ago, and I liked his idea. I never thought about this before. I always thought of, I'd like to see it maybe 2 years on, 2 years off. No, 2 years on, 2 years off. But he made a good point. I like this idea where he said, do like 3 years on, 2 years off, and it's one games before Collins, one in Boulder, one in Denver, and then 2 years off,
Okay.
and then you do that kind of rotation. I kind of like that. I would like to see it in Denver every now and then, but I do love that it's back on campus, and I love having the game. To me, it's kind of sad. This is the last one for 5 years.
I wish that you could kind of have that 3-year window in which both teams would agree that when they're at their best, they can play down in Denver. When Colorado and Colorado State are solidified with their head coach and they have a good football team, it can be an amazing atmosphere down in Denver.
Yeah.
But if the teams are struggling, you shouldn't play down there. So it's tough to say that. And that's part of the thing. Like, Rick George, if he could go back, he would not have scheduled North Dakota State this year, or probably a road game at Nebraska week 2, given that, Coach Prime and these Buffs need some wins early to kind of ease into things when you bring in new transfers. And so you're guessing far in advance. It's really difficult.
Yeah.
But I would like it once every decade, I guess, is what I would give you with Denver. That would be fun.
I do think if they did it every 3 years, though, it would end up being like once every 5 years in Denver, if they did like a 3-year run. And I think that I agree with you. Like, it's better when the teams are good, but I think that by the time they would get back to Denver, it'd be sort of a novelty again. To me, what was bad about Denver is it became stale. It was every year down there, and the teams weren't very good. But and I agree with you on the schedule. That's the one benefit of basketball scheduling is like Tad Boyle can tailor his schedule based on, this is my team this year. This is what this team needs. You can't do that in football because, you look at the future schedules and CU so they're playing non-conference, 8 years from now, and they could be 3 head coaches down the road at that point. So based on history, right? So who knows? But I do like this game. I'm glad it's here this year. We'll worry about the future in the future, I guess. But this is the last one for 5 years. I'm kind of sad about it. I miss when it wasn't there for a couple of years, in the recent past. So, but I'm glad it's here this year.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to going into Canvas Stadium and kind of getting a lay of the land. I've been around the facilities there, but have never seen a game at Canvas Stadium. And I don't know. You said you think it's going to be a third Colorado fans. I will give CSU credit. They've tried to keep the Buffs out of this building, even media members, it seems like.
Right. Yeah. Rick George tried to keep Nebraska out of Folsom a couple years ago too, and that didn't work. So we'll see. I would guess. I still think there's going to be a heavy amount of CU fans there. Maybe it's not a third. I'd be surprised if it's not a quarter. I get to cover the first game at Canvas because they played Oregon State, and I decided to go up there. CU was not playing. I think it was a week 0, and I wanted to cover that game to see both teams. It was his first game, so it was a nice new venue. But I'm looking forward to going back. It's been, I don't even know when that was, 2018 or something like that. So I'm looking forward to seeing another game there.
Yeah, I think that, or at least I hope so, that they've beefed up security, because there's a lot of feelings on both sides. Colorado State feels like they should have won last year's game, and Colorado is, I don't know what their feelings are. They've been very politically correct about things this week, but like, come on. We all saw that shot Henry Blackburn had on Travis Hunter. Right. You're telling me that there's not something that's not being shown on well-off media that is firing these guys up this week? There should be, because, and I get the fact that Coach Prime says like this is what you signed up for. We shouldn't have to give you that external motivation, but that external motivation's been built in since last year's game, and you got to use that somehow. Because I know Travis Hunter had the whole sit down with Henry Blackburn, and I credit him. The second I heard that there were death threats going out to Henry Blackburn, it was like pump the brakes on this whole thing because this has gone way beyond football. This is not cool, but that was a dirty hit. And he's still on the football team. Travis Hunter's still on CU's team. So this has got to have a little extra motivation as a result of that, right?
Yeah, I would think so. And I agree with you that you got to use it, especially because you know your opponent's going to be using it. If your opponent is using that extra motivation, then you got to take some of it too. And I do agree with Coach Prime that you shouldn't need that extra motivation. But in this case, I think you do, because you've got to match the energy of your opponent. They didn't last week. That was, I think, one of the biggest difference in that game was that CU never matched the intensity and the fire that Nebraska had. Not only the fan base, but the team. And I think CU never matched that. They better match it this week, or else they're going to lose this football game. And if CU loses this football game, I think the wheels are going to come off. I think that you're going to see a lot of people jump off the bandwagon, especially nationally. And I think this could be a really long season. I think this is to me, this is a must win. It's hard to say that in week 3. I think this is a must win.
It's the biggest game of the Coach Prime era, I think, is what we can definitely agree on there. You don't want to think about the consequences if they lose this football game, go 1-2 in a conference play. So, we'll get into our predictions later, but you got to find a way to win this football game.
Yeah, and I'm not one that I think there's a lot of overreactions week to week. There's been I think some overreactions to the way last week looked at Nebraska and, this team is terrible. I don't think that. I really, truly believe that Nebraska came out. They were 100% determined to win that football game and just took it to the Buffs, and some things snowballed. I don't think the Buffs are that bad. I think there's a very good opportunity here for them to get back on track and really make this a good season. I think that the next 2 weeks, to me, are extremely important, but it's got to start with this week.
Yeah, and it's not going to be an easy matchup, even though I know Colorado State got murdered by Michigan on the road in week 1. Texas in week 1. Why did I say that? But there are still holes on this Colorado State game, it seems like, in year 3 of Jay Norvell. And they've got some pieces offensively, but their best players banged up going in this game. Defensively, if you're Pat Shurmur and Shedeur Sanders, this is a week you need to feast. I don't know if there's a defense there are a few. Texas Tech later in the season, but at least early on, this is the defense you should be able to get back on the right track for.
But let me ask you this, about how they do that, because I actually believe that if CU wanted to, they could put the ball in the air a bunch and put up a bunch of points through the air. But I also think that if you're ever going to establish a run game, it's got to happen this week. I mean, you've got to start doing it this week. And I know, I can tell what you're thinking as you smile there, like whether they're actually going to ever do that or not. But I think if you're going to do it, you've got to start doing that now, because you don't need it to win this game, is my point. But I think you might need it later on, and you've got to kind of start showing it now. I would love to see them establish some run, and then I think they can burn CSU with the pass. But I think I'd like to see them establish a run. What do you think? I mean, or would you rather just say, fine, throw it up, hit Travis Hunter, Jimmy Horn, Will Shepherd, hit those guys, throw 6 touchdown passes, whatever?
I'm just fatigued at talking about this after the last 14 weeks of, or 14 games of covering Colorado. Yes. Is it important to be balanced on offense more than they have been? 100%. Should they try to establish that on Saturday against Colorado State? 100%. Will they do it? I don't know. Obviously,
that's less than 100%.
Less than 100% there. Dallin Hayden is not going to be in the lineup. We saw Draylon Miller get a carry early in the season opener. We know Isaiah Gustav is a guy that's a downhill runner that had some success at Arkansas as a true freshman. I thought he looked good on a couple carries late there in the game at Nebraska. We love Micah Welch's dog mentality. I want to see that, Brian. Even if I wasn't a Colorado reporter and just kind of a general observer of CU football, I would want to see that. And I hope to see that on Saturday. I don't know if we'll see that on Saturday because I
Yeah.
am getting a little bit jaded at this point.
And I will add too, another guy you didn't mention is as someone who you gotta like Charlie Offerdahl. I would love to see him have some success running the football. I honestly don't care who it is. And yes, I have my opinion. I would like to see Isaiah Auguste, Micah Welch, Dallin Hayden when he's healthy, probably more than Charlie. I really don't care who it is. If Charlie can go out and run for 100 yards, that's fantastic. If he can have 10 carries for 70, that's awesome. I don't care who it is, but I would love to see it. I am skeptical about whether we're going to see it.
Yeah, sorry to semi cut you off there.
No,
I don't think there is a person on this planet that cheers for Colorado that does not want to see Charlie Offerdahl go for 100 plus.
Yeah.
What you're basing your opinion on in terms of who should get the carries is what you've seen so far.
Yeah.
And the coaches have seen more in practice, but Colorado's offense goes against Colorado's first team offense goes against its second team defense on a regular basis. And I think Colorado's second team defense is much better than we've seen in Boulder in a long time. I like the depth there.
Yeah.
But it's still not the first team. It's still not going against Chidozie Wanko when he's healthy and Shane Cokes and those linebackers, Vonta Bentley and Nakai Hill Green or Trevor Woods. And so that's the part of it with Charlie that I just don't want his legacy to be stained at Colorado. And it's trending that direction based on some of those short yardage failures that I don't know. I know Charlie wants that. He's a competitor, but I mean, come on. If Colorado's trying to win the Big 12 championship, you got to aspire to be a little bit better in those situations.
Yeah, for sure. And I would love to see it from Charlie. I'm curious to see who will be blocking for him. We were texting a little bit yesterday and looking at well-off videos. It looks like Phillip Houston is going to be the newcomer on that offensive line. Based on what I've seen, I don't know if you've seen differently, but it looks like Phillip Houston at right tackle and Tyler Brown moving over to left guard and Justin Mayer's odd man out. Does it look like that's what it's going to be?
Justin Mayers has been dealing with an injury, I believe. So that might play into that a little bit. And we did hear Coach Prime say we might shake it up a little bit on the offensive line. So, I guess you would take that as something to look into going into this game. I try to wait till pregame to really have a firm grasp on in terms of what they're going to do at that offensive line with this current staff.
Yeah.
I don't know. We haven't seen Phillip Houston play at Colorado. I will say this, Brian, and we talked about this earlier this week. Kind of with Charlie Offerdahl in short yard situations, I think he can be successful, Charlie, in other situations. But you got to put these guys in a position to succeed. And I think that Tyler Brown being at right tackle is not really fair to him. He's a guard. He's an interior guy.
Yep.
And so, hopefully he grades out better in there if he indeed moves inside.
And I think Tyler, you got to love Tyler. He's another guy you root for. There's a lot of guys on this team you root for. I think Tyler can be good at guard. And Phillip Houston, yes, he has not played yet. Take it for what you will. He was the starting right tackle for Mike McIntyre's Florida International Panthers all of last year. So,
By the way, Mike McIntyre beat Jim McElwain in a impressive fashion at FIU this past weekend at what do they call that, Pitbull Stadium?
Yeah, so go Coach Mac, and
I like Coach Mac. I'm cheering for him.
I do like Coach Mac. Yeah, I probably like him more than he likes me, but that's okay. But the point is, we'll see how well Mike McIntyre got Phillip Houston ready for the Buffs, right? But the point is, Phillip Houston, he knows that spot. He played right tackle all of last year. He knows that spot. Tyler Brown had never played tackle in a game before North Dakota State. So I like having a right tackle at right tackle. I like having a guard in Tyler Brown at guard. And so I think that in that case, I feel better about this line going forward because as much as I want to root for Tyler Brown, he struggled in the first 2 weeks. It was not looking good at right tackle. So I'm interested to see what this group looks like.
I'm also interested to see what other offensive lines look like against Nebraska's defensive front going forward.
Yeah.
Because we're 2 games into the season. We all have this really small sample size. We talked about it after the first week of like, you try to make these impressions based on a very small sample size. And, as the season plays out, different narratives change, things change. If Nebraska's defensive line just continues to dominate other offensive lines and Colorado's offensive line continues to improve, we'll look back on week 2 and kind of chuckle about it and say we overreacted back then, but we're not to that point. Right. So we're only basing it off what we saw last Saturday, and it was ugly. But Nebraska's front seven was pretty salty. Colorado State's is not going to be anywhere in that stratosphere.
Well, and to your point, I will say we're going to learn a lot about the CU offensive line. We can learn a lot. We can learn a lot this week because 2 games in, CSU has 1 sack. And if you look at Pro Football Focus, their grades, and, again, we always say take that with a grain of salt, but they've only hit the quarterback a couple of times. There's not a lot of pressures. And so, there's not much there. This is not last year's CSU. Like CSU with Kamara last year, he was an impressive player. They don't have that guy right now. And, they don't have the pass rush right now. So if CSU's getting to Shedeur quite a bit this week, I think there's legitimately a problem. I think I agree with you to your point. Let's maybe pump the brakes a little bit because Nebraska might actually have a really good defensive front that just gives a lot of people fits. But I think if the Buffs struggle this week, that's a problem.
Yeah, I thought last week would be a litmus test, and it was in a very negative way.
Right.
This is like a different type of litmus test. It's kind of like how are you going to respond to adversity test more so, right?
Yeah.
And because you're going into a pretty tough environment at Canvas Stadium, but it's not going to be as tough as what you faced last week. They're going to have, I would say their quarterback's pretty good. He had some mistakes last year. Braden Fowler Nicolosi. They call him BFN.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with that. BFN. He was okay. He was pretty good last year. He was pretty good, but his mistakes were costly big time for them. And they couldn't run the football against Colorado. They're saying that they have Justin Marshall, who's going to be better than what Colorado saw last year. Keegan Hollis from Cherry Creek, a kid that came back from 2 torn ACLs and had a nice game against UNC. I still don't think that ground game is going to be anything that really makes you stay up at night if you're Robert Livingston, but this is a Colorado State game that's got enough talent in year 3 of Jay Norvell that if you don't show up and play a good brand of football, you're going to be exposed. But at the same time, if you're Colorado and you have these goals and you're coming off that disappointment in Lincoln, it should result in a pretty convincing win. But until we see it, it's hard to fully expect that to happen.
I do think Marshall's a pretty good running back. I mean, I think he had 100 yards, a little over 100 yards against Texas. I do think he is better than what the Buffs saw last year. But again, I don't think it's scary. I think it's just he's going to be productive. I think he's going to get his yards. I'm also curious to see how effective is Torrey Horton. I know he's giving it a go after getting injured last week. Can he actually give it a go? So that's going to be interesting to see. Pat Rooney and I were kind of joking when we talked a little bit ago that after what he said this week, he better be able to give it a go. Because he said some interesting things about the Buffs that they wanted to murder them. They should have murdered them last year. And so if he can't go and back that up, then that won't be a good look for him. But look, if he's healthy, I do think with BFN, with Torrey Horton, and with Marshall, I think they got a good trio on offense right there. And they're usually pretty stout on the offensive line. So I would expect CSU to be able to get some things done on offense. I think the difference to me is that I'm not sure that CSU defense can really slow down the pass game of the Buffs, and I think that's the biggest difference right there. CSU, to me, they're gonna score and they're gonna get some points in this game and some yards.
Yeah, Colorado State's defense, I don't think is very good. So
right,
This is a week, as I said, with a recent interview. Might be what the doctor ordered, but I mean, you still got to execute. Like you even look early in that Nebraska game, and everybody wants to go after Pat Shermer, and I get it. You got to. It's a bottom line industry that these guys are in.
Yeah.
But you drop a tip pass, drop a pass, and like just some of the stuff was just lack of execution as opposed to with established guys like LeJontay Wester and even Shador Sanders with that pick six, like guys you just don't expect these type of plays out of that were hurting this offense. You got to hope that's fixed in Fort Collins on Saturday. And if that's the case, then Colorado's offense should be able to put up 40 plus points.
And especially if CSU really can't generate much of a pass rush, and Shador, I've always said, and we've always said, if Shador has time, he's going to carve up a defense. So I think if he's got time, he's going to have a huge day in Fort Collins. And hey, maybe he'll throw for 550 yards and they rush for 15 yards on 12 carries. And Coach Brown will say, I don't care. we won the game and had 500 yards of offense, and that's probably fine. But I still would like to see that run game.
Everybody does. I mean, it's just anybody that's watched a lot of football knows that you have to be multidimensional on offense, and they haven't been in 14 games under Coach Prime.
So let's get to our predictions here on the 14th game with Coach Primera. How does it end up? What do you think?
Colorado State is going to be salty, and here's the ultimate unknown is just their effort level. We heard Shador Sanders say at Big 12 Media Days, we're everybody's Super Bowl. And some national folks took that as, well, that's a really brash statement to make after going 4-8. And I'm thinking he's absolutely 100% correct.
Yeah.
And we saw it out in Lincoln, Nebraska last week. My goodness, I've never seen an atmosphere like that, a crowd as loud as that. And now you go to Colorado State and it's their Super Bowl. So their effort is going to be on 10. Now for Colorado, their effort should be on 10 every week. I mean, that's the coach speak, right?
Yeah.
But human nature is part of this. I think the fact they're coming off a loss helps Colorado a lot going into this game from that human nature standpoint to really see a watered down version of what they saw in Lincoln and to try to murder this team as Torrey Horton said they were going to try to do the CU last year or this year. I don't know what he was talking about. But Colorado is favored by 7.5. I think they'll cover that, but it will be a little bit closer as a result of this being maybe the biggest, no, not maybe, the biggest game in Canvas Stadium history. Give me Colorado 41-31. I do think Colorado State will be able to score some points. We'll keep it close. There's going to be, if you're a nail biter as a Colorado fan, there's going to be some moments to bite those nails, I think, in this game.
Yeah. Because
I do think there's just so much fueling the Rams going into this game, but also now after last week that CU has kind of a similar situation in their locker room. This is a must win, like you said, from an early season standpoint. And so I think Colorado wins this by double digits, but it's not going to be comfortable at any point.
Yeah. I also think we haven't talked about this guy at all. I bet Travis Hunter really wants this game. Getting knocked out early last year, he didn't have a chance to make an impact. I think a lot of Buff fans, and who knows, we'll never know. I think a lot of Buff fans believe if Travis Hunter plays that entire game, it doesn't end up like it did, that the Buffs maybe win that in regulation going away. We'll never know. But Travis Hunter, we saw frustration from him on the sidelines last week in Nebraska. I bet he comes out as a dog this week and wants to dominate offensively, defensively. I think he's going to be phenomenal this week. This to me sets up as a huge opportunity for Travis Hunter to have a big game. Shador Sanders, I think the stars have got to come out and play well for the Buffs. Cam Silman-Craig, I'm going to put him up in that category right now too. The stars have got to come out and play. I think they will. We didn't see the Buffs respond well to adversity last year. This is the first big test for that this year. I think they respond to it. I agree with you. It's going to be an awesome atmosphere, probably the biggest game in Canvas Stadium history to this point. But I think the Buffs win it, and I'm going 38-24.
I like it. Yeah, I think that for Travis Hunter, you were talking about, this could be a weekend to kind of get back on the Heisman radar, because I
Yeah,
think he fell firmly out of it last weekend. What he's doing, even last weekend, when you look at what he did against the Cornhuskers, he was literally the least of CU's issues in that football game with what he did. And so this would be a proving ground. I think for Travis, and God bless his soul, because he seems like somebody that just doesn't really take some of this stuff so seriously, like even you and I, and obviously a lot of fans out there. He did the whole Henry Blackburn video on YouTube where they reconnected and try to kind of put a damper on some of those threats coming towards Henry, which was great. It was a great moment, but you got to remember that. And this is an opportunity, because Travis Hunter is only going to be in that Heisman discussion if Colorado is winning. This is a week where they have to win and him play convincingly well, which I think he will. And that would be fun to see.
yeah. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. And Adam, I'll see you in Fort Collins.
I can't wait.